ISIS has already declared that the Barcelona attackers were, quote, Islamic State soldiers. The Prime Minister of Spain has confirmed that attack was motivated by radical Islam. The attack, though, is just one in a long string of deadly attacks in Europe. In the past, the weapons of choice were hard-to-build bombs. Now they're easily obtained cars and trucks. Nigel Farage is the former head of the UK Independence Party and has long been sounding the alarm on Islamic extremism in Europe. He joins us tonight. At what point, Nigel, do you think that your leaders, European leaders, start to realize maybe these attacks are connected in some sense?
Oh, no, there's no realization at all. In fact, what happens is they all stand up and they say, we stand in solidarity with Barcelona or Brussels or Stockholm or Paris or London or wherever it may be. And this is really, truly awful. And we have no understanding of why this is going on. And not once do we ever hear a single leader in Europe offer any policy solution whatsoever. They are still in denial, and I can only guess it's because they're so embarrassed by the fact that they have caused this.
Angela Merkel is regarded as a hero by liberals in the United States. Still, is there any political price to be paid by any of these European leaders for these policies which are demonstrably failing and making the continent worse?
Well, I think there will be, and I think, to be honest with you, if we go back a year, I think Brexit was about much of this, wasn't it? It was the British people saying, look, you know, we actually want to control our borders, not because we dislike anybody, but because we believe, firstly, in sensible border controls, and secondly, in protecting ourselves and making ourselves a bit safer. So you could say the EU has paid a big political price in terms of Brexit. But for the moment, one of the problems is that many of the parties around Europe that stand up against Islamic extremism themselves appear to the electorate at times to be a bit extreme themselves.
Right. Well, that is true. Is it my imagination, or are we not seeing attacks like this in Central and Eastern Europe?
Well, you're not, and of course it's very interesting, isn't it, that, I mean, Viktor Orban, who is the Prime Minister of Hungary, along with the other Prime Ministers in Poland, the Czech Republic and Slovakia, they've been told by Merkel and the gangsters in Brussels that they must accept the migrant quotas of those that are coming in across the Mediterranean, and they've simply said no, we're not going to do it. And if we're being really frank about this, Tucker, there is a direct link and relationship between the number of people you let in from different religions and different cultures and the number of terror attacks. And that's why in Eastern Europe you're simply not seeing it.
Interesting. Do you think they can hold out against the demands from Brussels to change their immigration policy?
They're being threatened with going to the European Court. They're being threatened with being fined. They're being threatened with European funds being withheld. Do you know something? These countries have lived under communism. They've lived under Nazism. They've lived under all these things within living memory, within a human lifespan. And I do not think they are going to buckle for one moment. And when you see scenes like that boat coming onto the beach in Cadiz the other day, I think they're pretty determined to stand their ground.
Why would... and I'm sure that you could write a book on this because there's a lot of psychodrama in it, but crisply, why in the world would European leaders want Hungary to follow the example of Germany's immigration policy?
Well, because the point about the European Union is that it wants to take away the power of all the individual member states and make them abide by one rule. That's the path they've headed down with the euro and everything else. They've wanted to create a United States of Europe, but the problem is this is not America. It's a continent of very diverse peoples, and you can see with Brexit, with rebellions that we've seen in Greece against the Eurozone, and now with the Central and Eastern European states saying they will not take Islamic terrorism and even Islamic immigration on a huge scale. I think the whole European project is falling apart. But I tell you what interests me, apart from what's happening in Europe, is, OK, we can say the European politicians are in denial, but it's what's happening in America that amazes me. Seems to me there's a large section of America that is much more concerned with tearing down historical statues that date back to the Civil War than recognising who the real enemy of the West is.
Of course, of course. There's never been a country with a dumber class of leaders than ours, unfortunately. Nigel Farage, thanks a lot for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.